Good morning and welcome to today's SitRep. Okay. The SitRep for the 8th of November 2022. Welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining me, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on YouTube, or whether you're listening to this in the audio version on the podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. I apologize. I am traveling again today. So back in the hotel, and the light's a bit funky on YouTube. If you're listening to this on audio, you're like, what is he doing? Doesn't make any sense. Good morning to you, Kieran. Glad you could join me this morning. I hope you're all well. It's been a couple of days since I've shot one of these out, but I'm back. Your favorite harbinger of doom, Gads on Ragnarok Survival. So let's get amongst it today, because the sun is shining and I've got to get to work at some stage. What's happening in the world? I hope you're well, wherever you are. It's nothing too crazy that's going on, except, World War III and the collapse of civilization. But apart from that, things are all right. I think things are going okay. Let's have a look at what's coming down the pipeline, because that's what this is all about. We have a look at these news stories, we pull them apart, we have a think about it from the perspective of prepping and how we can best keep ourselves prepared as individuals, as self-reliant individuals, as human beings who stand up and are responsible for our own survival situation and for that of our families, those of our people in our friend circle, our community at a whole, and figure out how we can look after each other. Mark Stoney Wilcox, good morning to you from Virginia. Virginia, what's the time there, my friend? Be late at night, would it not be? Or maybe early in the morning? No, it's not early in the morning. Late at night, I'm thinking. Thanks for joining. And oddly enough, I'm going to start off with some US news today. So we're going to start off with rumblings of a war, of what's been happening in the world. And of course, the US inevitably is involved as the world's superpower, as it were, the world police right now. They're usually involved in these things. 2:55 in the afternoon. Oh, it's a great time to be sitting down and listening to some bearded Aussie dude talk at you. Let's start off with this one coming out of the Independent in the UK. US nuclear forces chief says Ukraine just the warm-up for larger crisis. Now, this was actually circled around a lot of mainstream media. It was a lot of circular reporting. I didn't really figure out who reported on this first. It did get mentioned in one of the stories where this person was talking about it from, but it's not really that super important. I just saw it because this isn't like, this shouldn't be a news flash to everyone. I'll just read a little bit of what they said. The big one is coming, and it isn't going to be very long before we're going to get tested in ways we haven't been tested before. US general saying. So, this should be obvious to everyone, I think, at this point in time, that we should pretty much know that, things are going to get worse. There's going to be a bigger battle war coming. What they're alluding to here is the inevitable China clash. At this point, that's what they're looking down the pipeline, and they're saying, hey, if you think things are bad now, we haven't even stepped into war technically. The US, the West as a whole, we haven't really even stepped into it. We've been kind of taking the steps towards it, but really just pumping money into Ukraine and letting them do it. What happens next is something quite serious, because I think rightly so, everything we've seen at the moment is just the overture. It's the prelude, really, to what's coming down the pipeline at the moment. And the technologies and the war fighting that we've seen is, the war fighting at the moment, apart from some of the technologies being a bit more advanced, but really the actual war fighting is old school that's happening in the Ukraine at the moment. It's old school stuff. We haven't seen the real technical advancements that you would expect from a full-blown war. And I think that's what this person is actually alluding to. Bit of a dire warning, though, to the world as a whole that got jumped on there. Counterpoint to this, a senior Chinese official has called on the military to quote, be ready for war at all times with any country that interferes with the reunification of Taiwan. So this is Major General Yu Yangtong said the Chinese military must be ready for war at all times and operate in a heightened readiness to combat external interference relating to Taiwan. No new news there, nothing really surprising about anyone from China coming out and saying that at this point in time. Just more the fact that this did come out just after the US dropped their little hint about like, hey, we need to be ready for something bigger. The way I'm looking at it is this is veiled communication through mainstream media at the moment, or through mainstream media on the West, and China releasing what information they release as official reports. Obviously, their mainstream media is very much their government media, so very controlled at the best of times. Interesting kind of stuff that's coming out here. We can see the tension starting to build again, even though, like I've been saying the last couple of SitReps that I've done, there appears to be a backpedaling from the US. The information that you're getting out of the US government does look, or it appears to me from the outside looking in, that they're kind of going, okay, actually, let's start to wheel things back. We're getting really close to nuclear war. We're getting really close to war with China. We're getting really close to being involved in a couple other wars. Even Korea, I would say, and they're going, okay, let's just pump the brakes on this a little bit. I wouldn't say that they've pumped the brakes or come out and said, we're not going to fight a war in Korea if North Korea moves. They have kind of said the opposite, but they haven't said it in the way they usually say it, where they're very adamant and they're like, hey, we're doing this 100% South Korea. South Korea's been saying stuff and they said, and our friends US are going to come along, but US is kind of like sitting in the background going, yeah, what he said. Like, it's a strong message through omission of strong messages. That's what I'm seeing there. Anyway, China, obviously becoming more and more active in their rhetoric around Taiwan. Timelines for this, a lot of people, I think it's easy to look at the Taiwan thing and go, this is imminent. It could happen now. And it could. It definitely could. All right, that is within the realm of possibilities. It's possible. It's probably more likely at this point that it'll be like 5 to 10 years, I think, is what we're looking at with this whole Taiwan thing for China to move. So it could happen. It could be happening right now. I don't know. But it's as likely to happen right now as it is within the next 3 years. I'll put it that way. And it could even be pushed out in years' time. They've got the ability, I think China has the ability to actually wait this one out a little bit. Not infinitely, but if they keep doing what they're doing and kicking cans down street and holding out, they're waiting to move from a position of power. I mean, this is basic Sun Tzu's Art of War type stuff. They're playing, that's their playbook, and they play it very well, much better than the West does a lot of the time. And so, yeah, it's not the sky is falling in Taiwan. It could happen, could not happen. If it does happen, it's obviously a big deal, but just wait and see this. US is privately asking Ukraine to show it's open to negotiating with Russia. So this has been spanked, like absolutely spattered all over mainstream media and alternative media sites. They're like, US is saying this, US is saying this. I actually, I had the original source and I deleted it. So I can't remember who reported on this, but it was a pretty big mainstream media that came out with this, broke this news and was like, hey, the Biden administration is privately talking to Ukraine leaders and trying to encourage them to make overtures towards Russia that they're okay to negotiate. They're really starting to push this negotiation thing. Again, really interesting stuff. And I read that and was like, "Ooh!" On the surface, this looks like strangely like sanity. Like, whoa, what's going on here? Are we suing for peace now? Are we actually stepping away from the nuclear war edge? This sounds like a good idea. Whether it is happening or not is another thing. Counterpoint to this, US has just pushed one of its nuclear subs, nuclear-capable subs, not only nuclear-capable, but it is a nuclear sub. It's powered by nuclear power, but it also can fire, I think, something like 18. Let's say, yes, 24. It's got 24 Trident II missiles, which are capable of being fitted with nuclear warheads, which allegedly this particular sub, the USS Rhode Island, Ohio-class sub, carries nuclear warheads, and it just passed into the Mediterranean Sea. So it's like, hey, Ukraine, sue for peace. Meanwhile, we're doing everything we can to go into nuclear war. When you're starting to push up technology like this, heading into the Mediterranean, it's obviously past. It came into, for those who don't know, it was actually reported that it reached Gibraltar, which is, you could argue, the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea on November 1st. And now an Italian newspaper is saying that it's no longer in Gibraltar, it's now in the actual Mediterranean. It's passed through the threshold and is into the Mediterranean now. And the fact is that they are, like, this information, a submarine is very hard to track. And an Italian newspaper, like, I don't know how good their investigative abilities are, but I don't think an Italian newspaper is really sitting there watching and tracking one of the most key pieces of strategic warfighting ability that the US have. And I would put the Italian newspaper more in like a couple of guys in a dinghy somewhere, or just sitting in an office somewhere, like watching stuff. So obviously, if they've got this information, they've got it because the US wants them to know it. And if the US wants them to know it, it means the US wants Moscow to know it. They want Moscow to know it. They want them to know that, hey, we have a sub in your general area, in the European area, which could push up towards the Black Sea, which has missiles on it, not one, but 24 missiles that can travel thousands of kilometers with nuclear payloads. That's what we want you to know right now. I'm following this under the classic thing of what I always say. Look at what they do, not what they say. Again, I'll just reiterate this. A major mainstream media source came out and said, hey, secretly, Biden has been pushing for peace. Isn't he great? Oh, what a coincidence. Just before the midterms. What a great guy. We should all vote for him, by the way. So look at what he's doing. Oh, they're doing it in secret too. Yeah, it's a secret that they're doing it. That's what they're saying. What are they doing? Hey, here's our big black submarine. Check it out. Yeah, I don't buy it personally. I don't buy any of this sort of peace talk. I wish I could. I want to. I want to buy the peace talk. I want to see that we're moving in a better direction. I'm a skeptic, right? And I'm a doomsayer, and I'm a prepper. What I do is I look at the worst things in the world and I look at the worst case scenarios and I try and prepare myself for that, and then make sure that everything else underneath that is ticked off as well. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay, I'd love to just bite into the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid of the peace talks, but you're showing me other stuff. The US, you're showing me other stuff at the moment. North Korea's come out. They're vowing a resolute military response to the US-South Korea exercises that are going on at the moment. So the US, South Korea were having exercises. It's increased tensions in the area, which we've seen a number of these things all over the world at the moment that are happening. The latest one was, I think there's been 2 sorties of North Korean warplanes that have actually buzzed the tower of South Korea's border or airspace, which has caused a response. One of those responses was that apparently the US started to pre-position planes, I think some of their bombers from Guam into South Korea, saying, oh yeah, we're just doing it for the exercises. And people are like, wait, aren't those exercises wrapping up? And they're like, oh, surprise, we're going to extend these exercises. So now North Korea's come back out and said, look, we're vowing a resolute military response, whatever that is. But when you're a crackpot, dictator who has nuclear weapons, then you can start to imagine what that response might be centered around. All right, enough doom and gloom from geopolitical side of things. Let's start to talk about shortages, because there are a lot of things that are causing shortages in the world right now. And so I'm just going to whip through these, and there'll be some other news mixed in there too. But we'll start with this sort of stuff. Eurozone factory activity sinks. So manufacturing activity across the Eurozone declined to the lowest level since the COVID-19 pandemic amid weakening global demand for goods. This is according to a study from S&P Global. This sort of stuff is a big deal. I see this sort of stuff and I'm like, this is actually huge. This is showing us showing me at least, the interpretation I have of it, the unwinding. We are in the unwinding at the moment. We are in the deindustrialization, potentially. And this is one of the key things that's happening when we start to lose our ability to manufacture, and the manufacturers themselves start to shut down. That's what we're actually seeing here, is this sort of contraction. Skip over that. Here's another story. Europe may see forced deindustrialization as a result of energy crisis. European industries, including ferroalloys, fertilizer plants, and specialty chemicals, are shutting down as a result of the ongoing energy crisis. So this is more of a collection of stories, and I've talked about a lot of these stories before, but this one's sort of centered on the EU at the moment. They're seeing this pretty consistent decline of actual manufacturing ability across the board, which is simultaneous. Shocking. I know this will blow your mind. At the same time, they're seeing and celebrating a decline in gas and energy consumption. They're going, great, look at what we're doing. We're decreasing gas consumption. We're decreasing electricity consumption. This is great. I'm almost convinced now that the green agenda will celebrate all the way to the bottom, when at the bottom, they'll go like, hang on, everything's anarchy. We're all fucked. We can't feed ourselves. We can't heat ourselves. We're all dying. What happened? Who's to blame here? Was it the right? Was it the left? Without realizing that we're actually doing this to ourselves right now, or this is where societies are going. We're going, yay! Look, we're decreasing gas and electricity usage and losing everything else. The big one that was in this here, European industries, including the ones that I mentioned, ferroalloys, specialized chemicals, fertilizer plants. That's the big one. Fertilizer plants, no food. Right? It's that simple. Okay. The way we have this many human beings on the face of the earth right now is through fertilizer. There's a couple other key things, but fertilizer is the green revolution, despite what anyone else will say. I can't see that there is, oh no, we've got better tractors and, we've got better farming practices. Like, no, we found a way to pump chemicals into our plants to make them grow more. That's the beginning and the end of it. If you don't believe me, look at what Sri Lanka did to their own country by pulling the rug of artificial fertilizers out. And I want to say this again. I have to reiterate this all the time. I don't like artificial fertilizers. I don't use artificial fertilizers. I grow my own food, but the vast majority, I grow some of my own food, like maybe at best 10% of my own food, and I hunt my own food as well. The vast majority of human beings on the face of the earth do not have anything to do with their own food system, and they are utterly reliant on fertilizer. We pull the fertilizer out. If there is no fertilizer, then that vast majority of human beings begins to starve. Human beings do not starve quietly. Okay, we don't just sit there and go, oh, I'm getting hungry, my family's getting hungry, I'm just going to sit on my bum and die. There is a very strong correlation between violent behavior and lack of bread. Just as an example, okay? When people start to starve, they go crazy. And that's what we're going to see in the world. That's what we're going to see. Kieran says the decline in productivity is so real and getting worse every day now. Just look around and don't believe anyone that says you're wrong. Okay. No, I do believe. I don't necessarily believe people who tell me that I'm wrong. I don't mind people telling me I'm wrong. I'm just ask that you prove it. But yeah, you're 100% right. You know, we just have to look around right now. It's becoming painfully obvious. Again, I don't put this stuff up here to say doom and gloom, we're all going to collapse and the world's going to starve and we're all going to go into Mad Max or anything like that. What we need to start doing is look at news like this and go like, okay, how do I prepare myself? How do I prepare my family? How can I encourage my community to start growing their own food, creating their own energy? Legendary financial and geopolitical cycle analyst Martin Armstrong says, quote, the cheating in the midterm election next week is going to be so great that it is almost impossible to make a prediction. What he is pointing to here is that he believes they're going into civil war, essentially. He's saying civil war is a happening. So US, prepare thyselves. I don't know if he's necessarily right. I think it's going to be a funky time around this, but it's been funky times around elections for a little while now in the US. I'll come back to that story. It's really interesting. Russia seeks sanctions waiver to facilitate grain exports. So the whole grain thing, sort of blew up in their face when Russia got some of their ships attacked and they said, we're pulling the pin on it. Now they're coming out very predictably and saying, we'll allow grain to flow on the proviso you take some of those sanctions off. So they're using it definitely as a leverage point at the moment. They're using it as a bargaining chip, saying, if you want this grain, start taking those sanctions off. How does that sound? Renee C, hello to you on YouTube, says Sri Lanka and the WEF testing ground. Perhaps, yes. Energy decline correlates with societal decline. Definitely. I agree with that. Another warning from another company. I like to look at these large companies and hedge funds and, superannuation funds and things like that and see what they're doing, see where they're moving, see what they're talking about, because that usually gives us a good indicator. They want to be ahead of the curve. Now, Maersk, which is a Danish shipping group, which if you've ever seen any photo of a shipping container, especially like a dock, like one of those large shipping docks where shipping containers are coming on and off, you'll see Maersk plastered across a whole heap, probably the majority of those shipping containers, because I think they might even be the biggest. They're huge anyway. They're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, shipping groups in the world. They've come out and warned of dark clouds on the horizon. What the fuck does that mean? You the fucking weatherman now, Maersk? No. Danish shipping group Maersk warned this week of slowing demand for transport and logistics and said it has slashed its forecast for container demand for this year. It is, quote, it is clear that freight rates have peaked and started to normalize during the quarter, given by both decreasing demand and easing of supply chain congestion. So the world's biggest shipping company, here it is, which people quite often use as a barometer for global trade. We can see them moving stuff around, so they're going to tell us. They've now said the demand is to contract between 2 to 4%, so it's going down by 2 to 4%. Previously, it was hovering around 0%. It was either +1 or -1, somewhere around there. So to say now to go from +1 to -1 to -4 is a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal, I think you'll agree. But more forewarning of what's coming down the pipeline here. Speaking of shortages, FDA in the US has just come out and issued a warning that there might be a serious, or no, that not there might be, they are they actually are in a serious shortage of amoxicillin, which amoxicillin is a broad spectrum antibiotic, which is used in a number of different things, but especially children's respiratory illnesses, which has seen a stark incline post-COVID, post-opening up. So massive shortages in amoxicillin, but there's a whole heap of other things that's actually here. And if we start to look around the world as well, we can start to see a whole heap of key critical shortages, especially when we're looking in drugs and things like that. So antibiotics, pain medicine, things like that, ibuprofen, all these sorts of things. There are shortages throughout the US, throughout Canada, and some being reported all throughout the world. Why? Because these things are made from constituent products which are made in pretty much one country, and that one country is China. China locks down. Yep, that's it. We're all out of these things. China, India make many of the constituent products that go into the vast majority of our pharmaceuticals right now. And so any issues there or any issues with supply chain, and that's it. You don't get any. So be warned. Be warned with that. Things like these broad spectrum antibiotics, things like pain medications, over-the-counter pain medications like paracetamol and ibuprofen and blah, blah, blah. Now, these are the sorts of things that you might want to stock up on. Despite the fact that they have an expiration date, all right? But I will say this, if your amoxicillin expires on the 28th of November, 2022, it doesn't mean that on the 29th of November that it's poison or that it will kill you. It still friggin' works, all right? It's still going to work. And if you keep it in a safe space, like dark, cool conditions, then it's probably going to work to a okay degree. You know, I'm not a doctor, by the way, but for a number of months/years after that. Just saying. Amoxicillin is also actually something you can get from pet stores, because that's the antibiotic they usually use for fish. Just saying. If you've got goldfish, if all of a sudden you have goldfish and you need to stock up on some amoxicillin, you might want to do that. All right. I'm just going to whip through these last ones because I have to go and do work and stuff like that. Vietnam gas shortage starting to close due to widespread shortages. So Vietnam is saying, hey, we're out of gas. This is actually, I came across this and was interesting, then saw a follow-up from this that was sent to me from one of my sources on Instagram. So thank you again for sending that through. But this is actually due to price capping. There we go. Communist ideas, socialist ideas, capping price, making prices fair for everyone. Oh, except for the people who actually have to supply the stuff. And it's become so bad in Vietnam that petrol stations are going like, hey, it just doesn't make any financial sense for us to supply petrol at the moment, so we're not doing it. See you later. That worked well, didn't it? So be warned of price caps. Kiev put out a warning to evacuate all citizens in case of a total blackout. Oh, that's weird. Oh, wait. Today, emergency blackouts begin in the Ukrainian capital. Uh-oh. They're citing a recent spike in local electricity usage. Electricity usage suddenly gone up in Kiev. So now they're having blackouts. Oh, also just before that, 2 days ago, they said, by the way, if there's major blackouts, we're going to evacuate you. All right, let's start looking at that one. What's going on there? Last one I'm going to talk about, wood theft rises in Estonia amid energy concerns. So energy is running out, wood in high demand there. People are starting to steal it. Yeah. So looking down the pipeline, what are we seeing here? Energy security. It's going to be a big deal in the future. We need to start securing our own energy stuff. I am looking more into it because, you know, I love doing this sort of stuff. I'm looking more into it in my personal life. I've got pretty good energy security at the moment, but I'm always seeking a tactical position of advantage, as we would say in the military. I'm always looking for that better spot. How can I be better here? All right, gang, I have to jet. I've gone way over. So Great. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope there was something in the ramblings that was worthwhile for you. Keep prepping, keep safe out there. And as always, Semper Paratus.